Welcome back to another empowering episode of Level Up and Live, the podcast that's your compass on the journey to a more fulfilling life. I'm your host, Sean Myers, joined by my co-host, Ewan Heinemeyer. And today, we have a truly special guest joining us on the show, the e-commerce fanboy, CEO of Urian Media, dedicated family man, and the charismatic host of the Push to Be More podcast, Matt Edmundson. Get ready for an episode packed with insights, wisdom, and a healthy dose of inspiration as we dive into Matt's journey, both in the world of e-commerce and his personal pursuit of a balanced, meaningful life. Before we dive in, a quick shout out to our amazing listeners. You're the heartbeat of this podcast. If you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to leave us a review, hit that subscribe button so you never miss a moment of inspiration, and share this episode with a friend who would appreciate you thinking of them. And there's a little extra for you. Check out our treasure chest of free guides and planners in the show notes. It's our gift to you on this journey of self-improvement. Now, without further ado, let's elevate our minds and lives with the one and only Matt Edmundson.
I wasn't sure how I was going to start this episode off because Matt is a Liverpool fan, and I didn't know if that would lose a lot of fans or gain a lot of fans, or people would be like, "What's Liverpool?" Because it is here in America. But I know Liverpool very well. I've followed English football for a long time, but so clearly I've started with that. But Matt is an e-commerce, I want to say king. I was looking at his LinkedIn bio, the podcast things he talks about, and this man is a wealth of experience, a wealth of knowledge, and he's already, just before the show, said a number of things to us, and once again our minds are blown on what we don't know, and Matt definitely helped us out. So I can't wait to dig in and just understand how it is you do what you do at the level you do it at, because you're a CEO, you've got employees, you're running multiple businesses, multiple podcasts, and it sounds like a lot. And I'm like, I deal with a lot, Sean deals with a lot, but I don't know what your calendar looks like, Matt, but I would love to see how you manage it all. But yeah, if you could give us a little bit about yourself just to follow up there, man, we'd love to hear it.
Well, thanks, bro. It's good to be on the show, man. I'm excited. I've been looking forward to this one all week, and so it's great to chat to you guys. But yeah, no, I don't know if I'd call myself the e-commerce king, but thank you. It's very nice. I often call myself an e-commerce dinosaur, just because I've been around it for so long, since 2002. And, you know, if you measure digital years like you measure dog years, that's a really long time.
Yeah.
That's more how I refer to myself, really. But yeah, no, I've been doing e-commerce, like I say, since 2002. I've been podcasting since 2012. Love both those things, and we've built businesses around both those ideas. I was recording the other day, and I was telling the story about how I got started in e-commerce. We had a little web design agency that was making very little money. I'm not going to lie. You know, we were just starting out. We were just scratching for a living. You know what that's like when you first start, right? And we set this business up, and I was doing website design. I taught myself how to code. So this is in the late 90s, the early noughties.
Yeah.
And e-commerce was starting to become a thing. So I thought, well, I need to figure out how to write a website, an e-commerce website, just in case someone asks us about it, I suppose. And so I called a friend of mine who sold tanning products, right? And these were just creams that you wore when you went on tanning beds. That's all they were. And I said to him, I said, listen, I need to build an e-commerce website, figure something out. Do you mind if I use your products as a guinea pig? I'm going to put them online. If anybody buys them, great, because I'll just buy them off you and then I'll ship them out. Is that okay? And they're like, that's totally fine. I was really fortunate. You know, these guys were really, really kind to me.
Yeah.
And so we wrote the first website. It was called Tan Mad.
Tan Mad. This is 2002?
This was 2002. And so we launched the website in 2002. And I fell in love with e-commerce the day I woke up and checked my email and found out somebody had bought something from me whilst I was asleep.
Oh, cool.
And I just thought, hang on, I've woken up richer than when I went to sleep, right? And I thought, this is genius. This is inspired genius. This is what this is. And so, that sort of kickstarted a journey. And here we are, 2004. So that's 22 years later. So yeah, been a long time.
Amazing. I mean, so it went from tanning products. What was your next thought on that, man? Because there's just infinite amount of things. And of course, at 2002, I'm trying to remember. I mean, the internet was up and coming still. I mean, it was out, it'd been out, but it was really, I guess, e-commerce had been rolling, and there's a lot of supplements getting sold, I think, at that time and whatnot. But what was your next thing that you jumped onto?
What did we go into after tannin products? We've tried all kinds of things over the years. The thing that we did do after that was beauty, and played around a little bit with beauty. And then we set up a business called Jersey Beauty Company. And Jersey Beauty Company launched 2006. And it was set up originally by a guy called Andy, who's a really good friend of mine. And Andy and I at some point became business partners. And he's such a legend, this guy. And we set this business up, and we thought, I mean, this was 2006, so research wasn't quite what it's like now. But 2006, we thought, man, if we could sell 50 grand's worth of product a year, we were aiming for like £1,000 a week. So what's that, like $1,200-1,300 a week? We were aiming for that in our first year. We thought if we could do that, we would clean up. And we launched the website August 2006. And by the end of December 2006, so 4 months later, I'd have danced a jig if we'd have done £10,000 in sales, like $15,000 at the time, I think it was, something like that. I would have absolutely been over the moon, but we didn't do 10 grand in sales. We did over 400 grand in sales those 4 months.
Wow.
And it just went nuts. I mean, proper full-on nuts, instant nuts. And so the problem, and it was, let me tell you, much better problems to have, like how do you scale? How do you finance the stock? How do you distribute? How do you do fulfillment? Because we didn't have such things as like 3PL. So it's not like you could go to a logistics company, say, can you do the distribution for me? Because those kind of things didn't exist really for e-commerce businesses back then. How do we make sure the website doesn't fall when there's so many people on it, and all those kind of things? It was just crazy, crazy times.
Matt, what you must have, you don't do that by accident. You must have done, you didn't get lucky there. You had got the taste for this. You knew what had worked, and you had planned for what was going to work. Like what things did you do to make that happen? I mean, was it you knew where to place the ads in front of people, or how did you grow that business?
To be fair, you didn't. This was a very different time of the internet. So, yes, we used Google Ads. Google Ads were a lot cheaper and a lot easier, and there was only 3 or 4 of us on the internet doing it at the time. We had some advantages shipping from Jersey, which, as you all know, is a small island off the north coast of France, independently British. We had some tax benefits that we could take advantage of. So there are a number of different things at the time which don't exist now, right? So you couldn't do what we did now in the way that we did it. But we built the website. SEO was a lot easier. We got ranked super quick. We knew how to create a good buying experience on the website, and we knew how to ship out product. And so all these things we'd figured out along the way over the past 4 years, we knew about and we understood. And so it just took off. It just totally took off. It was great.
Matt, so when building what you've built since 2002, 20 plus years later, so now you've got multiple businesses, entrepreneur, you've got multiple podcasts. Man, how do you balance? How do you weigh your personal life and professional life in what you do? And is your family involved with your businesses?
Well, funnily enough, my daughter's downstairs in the office working right now.
Very cool.
She's she's bless her. She's 16 years old, and she's on half term, which is like a week's holiday here in the UK. And so she's really good at graphic design, and she and it's a project I've tried to do with our family, but it's predominantly been me and Zoe. We've written a gratitude journal together, which we're going to publish on Amazon. So
that's awesome.
We're going to do that. I've always had several things in my head in terms of balancing, things like work-life balance. One, I don't know if I see it as work. I don't know if I see them as two separate things. I don't know if it's that black and white for me. But I've always had this belief that you need to succeed at home first.
Yes.
And so 26 years married this year, happily married
Wow.
My wife is a legend. She's not killed me, which I still think is remarkable, right?
You survived. Yeah.
Yeah, I give her plenty of reasons, but she
Yeah.
just
Oh yeah.
doesn't do it. And so the kids, I have great relationship with all three of my kids. I'm super thankful for all of them. And then we just did lots of little things along the way, which I think were quite fun. So the kids understood that I was running a business. And so we would do things a little bit differently. Like I'd never pay the kids pocket money. Not at all while they were growing up. But what I did do is I said to them that, listen, if you have a business idea and I think the business idea is good, then I'll invest in it, right? So Josh, my eldest, when he was like, I think like 8, 9, 10 years old, somewhere around there, he came to me and he said, Dad, I've got an idea for a business. I said, what's that? He said, I'm going to get I want some chickens and I'm going to sell the eggs. So I'm like, well, you understand what this means. It means that you've got to look after those chickens. You've got to clean them out every day. You've got to make sure they're fed and watered. I mean, there's going to be poo involved. There's all kinds of things you need to think about. And he's like, yeah, no, I get. And we talked about it. And so we built a chicken coop together. I went and bought 6 chickens, invested in his business, cost me $30.
Let's go.
And he sold 6 eggs every day. He had 6 chickens and he sold 6 eggs every day. He made £1.80 every day. And he worked out it cost him 10 pence per egg, by the time he'd fed them. And so he was making 20 pence per egg. And he ran that business for a little while. He hated it in the winter because it was obviously miserable and cold. And a few years later, he sold that business to his brother and sister. That was fascinating, sitting down with my kids whilst they discussed buying and selling a company together.
Wow.
Which was quite fun.
Strange contract. You had them sign, you had a legal document, right?
Yeah, like Josh had to sign a non-disclosure agreement. He had to say that he would, not get into the chicken business for the next 2 years, and not compete.
I love that.
That's great.
Oh man! So is he the older? Is your son the older of the 3?
Yeah, 2 boys, and my daughter's the youngest.
So have you found that they've obviously understood how to do business from an early age, and it just proves, some people out there right now think they can't run a business, and to be honest, a lot of people shouldn't, because they shouldn't until they have acquired some set of skills, and starting a business and failing actually qualifies you to build those skills. But them learning from such a young age, have you seen them kind of take off on that entrepreneurial road, or do you see them maybe building their own businesses at some point later in their
I think they all have the capacity to build their own business. I think I don't see all 3 of I don't expect my kids to run their own businesses. I don't see them all doing that. But I think what they've done, what it meant was growing up, they understood the value of a pound.
Yeah.
And they understood what it was to go and graft and to be creative in terms of getting it. So I grew up, my parents divorced when I was quite young, like 8, 9 years old. And so my mum never really had any money when we were growing up. And so growing up in that kind of environment, I would often say to myself, it's never going to be like this for my kids, right? And so here I am, I have a business that's semi-successful. It would be really easy to give them everything that they ever asked for. And then I read the book, The Millionaire Next Door. I don't know if you guys ever came across that book. Great book, phenomenal book. And I thought, if I just give them everything that they want, I'm going to screw them up for life.
Yes.
And so actually by pulling back on that and saying no, but if you ... then I will ... right? And we can negotiate. So when they wanted new bikes, I'm like, I'll pay half. Josh, my eldest, is a really good guitarist, loves playing guitar. And the guitar he got when he was 11 years old, saved up his chicken money. I paid for half of it. He paid for half of it. Now, you could say, well, as a parent, you should obviously invest in your kids' musical abilities and stuff. But I wanted them to have a little bit of skin in the game.
I love that.
And so I don't know if I got it right, but these were just some of the things that we did growing up, with the kids, and just really wanted to succeed at home first. And so making sure the kids understood what it was that I did, how it was different maybe than just to go into work and And, all three of my kids have just had regular jobs where they've also gone and got, earned their money. And so, yeah, it's been a real blessing in many ways, the way that we've done it.
I'm curious, Matt, shifting gears a little bit. We haven't talked about this in previous episodes or even asked the guest, but what's your morning routine look like?
My morning routine, I will get up. I don't have an alarm clock. I tend to wake up around the same sort of time, around 7 o'clock, give or take sort of 5 or 10 minutes. I kind of got rid of the need for an alarm clock, mainly because I'm not totally rigid about it, but most of the time I try and aim to go to bed at the same time. I think actually going to bed at the same time, getting up at the same time is one of those things that they never tell you about at school, but I wish they did.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The sort of the change that has on you. And so
Yeah.
I tend to get up around 7. I will usually do something creative for like 35 minutes, 35 minutes. That's usually writing something. Because when I'm awake, then I'm really good at sort of that. Then around 7:45, my wife and I will just get together, cup of tea, sit in the front room, just catch up on with each other about each other's day. We'll pray together super quick, and then I will probably go to the gym, do a workout, listen to podcasts while I'm doing workout, and then by 9 o'clock I'm in the office. So that's my morning routine usually.
Love that. And it sounds pretty routine, in which is one of the major keys to what we've heard so many times. Like successful people, they have these indicators. They do the same thing and they love it, enjoy it. It's the life they want to live, and they do it on repeat, and it brings results. And it sounded very blissful. Your morning, it really sounded great.
Well, it's interesting. I remember during lockdown. There's a little known fact about me, and not to totally take the podcast off tangent, but I also pastor a church. I run a church.
Oh, fantastic.
And during lockdown, I got asked one question more than any other question. I mean, people all over the world were emailing in asking this one question. And it was all to do with sleep, right? Everybody's sleep was at the wall. And I thought this is a really fascinating question, to the point where I started to study out sleep more than I've studied anything, really. And I started to I don't think I'll ever release it, but in terms of writing, I started to write this book about sleep. And just looking at like scripture on sleep, how did they do it thousands of years ago? What was the whole big deal about it? And I came to this sort of revelation in my own life because I hated sleep. I thought it was a waste of time. I thought if I could sleep not 8 hours a day, but 5 hours a day and function the same, I would be so happy because of all the stuff I could get done in that extra 3 hours. And I saw it as something that I had to do. And my thinking changed a lot around this. When I remember I was walking in the park and I was just sort of thinking things through. And I came to the revelation that I lived my life in a very binary way. Like I was 100 miles an hour, go to bed, sleep, wake up, 100 miles an hour. It's very off, very off. But nature's not like that. It's a sine wave. And so of a nighttime, of an evening, when it comes to dusk, nature's sort of getting itself ready for bed. There's a process that it goes through. It doesn't instantly stop and try and sleep. It kind of winds down. The colors of the sky change. The sounds change. The smells change. You see what I mean? Nature's sort of getting ready for bed.
Great point.
Yeah, and it's the same in the morning, dawn, right? There's a process. We're getting ready to wake up, but there's a journey here. And they normally last about 70 minutes. Dusk and dawn normally last about 70 minutes. And so if nature needs this process to get ready for a morning, and it needs this process to get ready for its nighttime, then who am I to think that I can do something different? Fight against, the whole planetary system. And so that's when I became a bit more of a fan of this morning routine of creating something that lasted at least an hour. For me, it's 2, that eases me from sleep into the day, rather than just feeling like I need to hit go.
You just made me think. We're doing a lot of running right now. We're actually running our first marathon this coming Sunday. We've been training I've been a sprinter in the past. I've always liked to go fast, but I never thought about sleep like that before. That like waking up and just getting into it is like going on a 100-meter sprint all out with no warm up, no stretching. No, it's like you're going to break something. You're going to hurt yourself doing that. But you warm up, you do a few reps, you stretch everything off and get ready to rumble. And then you ease into that moment where you can just explode. And that's how you can keep coming back day after day to continue to do it.
And the cool down as well, right?
Yeah, and the cool down. Yeah, and the cool down, exactly, man. Yeah, that's huge. And the people that listen to this show, a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners, entrepreneurs, and yeah, it's a bit of an epidemic. You know, people are like, how can I fit more in? And it's like, well, you can fit more in by trying to fit less in. You know, it's counterintuitive.
It's a very good point. It is, because I was the opposite way around. I was like, I can fit more in by going to bed a little bit later and getting up a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
And my life was wrecked, you know. That's very over dramatizing it, isn't it? Really?
It feels like it.
Yeah, it just felt like, especially if you're throwing young kids into the mix, you know, and yeah, it can cause all kinds of issues, can't it? And so, yeah, that whole process, the waking up to the day is great. My wife's a big fan of, we call she'd kill me if I told you this, but she calls it faff time. So faffing, the time between us saying it's time to go to bed versus actually being in bed ready to go to sleep, lights out. That whole process of wind down.
Yeah,
we just call it the faff time, and so because there's a lot of faffing involved.
Yeah,
and so which is, I don't know if that translates actually. The word faffing in English just means. It means what? Just kind of nonsense, really. It's just kind of the silly things that you have to do.
We use that word in Scotland, and so I still use the word faff, but they don't use the word here in the States. But I've used this so many times. My wife now says it, and she's
right.
like, "Oh, I can't be faffing around," you know. So it always makes me laugh when I hear her say it. It's like,
just get on with it. Just get on with it. It's the opposite. It's like, stop faffing around and just get on with it. But yeah, no, I think it's super important. Super important. So yeah, I do got it.
Matt, shifting gears a little bit, what's your biggest struggle right now, and what are you doing to overcome this struggle? Business or personal?
Oh, which one do you want to hear about?
Let's do business.
So in business, what's the biggest struggle we have right now? So we have one of our companies is like a done for you e-commerce services business. So we bring in so we're brought into companies to run their entire e-commerce operation. So we manage everything, you know, marketing, fulfillment, inventory, all that's customer service, everything is managed by us. And so in the midst, it's quite an involved service. So we don't have many clients because the clients that we have, we're so invested in them, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
The downside to that is you only have a few clients. And so there's a balance that we have to think of as in that business with that agency. We have to think about, how do we get more clients without sacrificing the quality of service that we give? Because if we sacrifice the quality of service, the clients won't be happy. They won't stay.
Yeah.
But if we don't get more clients, I think it's not that we can't grow, because we're growing. We're almost doubling in size every year because we're helping all our clients double in size every year, right? So we work on a percentage basis. So as they do well, we do well. So it's not that we're not growing. We're growing quicker than a quick thing on a quick day, which is just a beautiful thing. But it's like, how do we mitigate risk? Because if you've got, you know, all your eggs in one basket, for want of a better expression, and we're doing everything we can to guard that basket, but I think, how do we spread the risk by getting more clients into it? So if one client leaves, it's not such a big deal on the company. Not that anyone's leaving right now, but it's just something in the back of my head.
You got to be prepared for it. What's the process to make that decision? Is it because you think, we'll just scale, we'll do what we've been doing, and we'll bring more people in to help do that? But obviously, it sounds like it's quite a tailored thing that you're providing to your clients, you know, and so it might not be as easy as just bring more people in, you know. Like, how do you all? Is it a fast decision that you would want to make?
No, it's not at all, because the problem you've got is we've done for you services for clients in the past, and it's not worked out. Not because we're not good, and not because the client's not good, but because I think from a cultural point of view, we just don't there's not that chemistry, that connection that I think you need with business. And so there needs to be that sort of cultural alignment. And so the issue is to find the clients with the same cultural alignment with us, that where we can help and supply, this service. If I'm going to grow staff in that area, I've got to grow staff with that same cultural alignment and technical skill, if that makes sense. And so that in itself is not a quick thing, because the old adage, be slow to hire, be quick to fire. That I am very aware that bringing people into the organization that don't fit from a cultural point of view is one of the worst things I can do as a business owner. It really is. And I think we actually have a little graph, a matrix that we use. On the vertical axis, we measure competence, how well somebody can do their job, which is it's what they tell you in their CV or their resume, isn't it? This is how well I can, this is how cool I am, how competent I am.
Yeah.
But if we measure on the horizontal axis cultural alignment, then it throws this whole graph out a little bit. So what you can have is somebody who is low on cultural alignment, but they're high on competence. Well, these people, my experience is, they're actually terrorists in your organization, because you're afraid to lose them because they're high performing. But they're running around doing whatever they want to do, and no one really seems to stop them because of, the archetypal sales guy who just doesn't care what the impact is of him agreeing something in a deal.
Yeah, you can't afford to lose me because I bring all the business in, and so I can kind of do. I'm special. I can do what I want, type thing.
We've all had those people in our companies, and it's the hardest decision you have to make, I think, as a businessman is actually letting those people go.
How important it is, because I look at it from a leadership standpoint, is like, okay, as a leader, I brought them in, right? And so I kind of released the reins. I let them go do what they were going to do. But at the same time, like, I'm going to take extreme ownership here. And I've started, because that was my mentality, is like, I'm going to bring in super producers. I want them just to go write a bunch of business and bring in a bunch of sales. Well, that can be cancerous down the road. And so now up front, I talk about core values. I talk about vision. I talk about what we stand for, what we're about. Mm-hmm. And typically what I have found that either weeds them out or it brings up a red flag. So I know culture is important to you. Do you have those discussions when you bring in somebody to the organization or the company?
We have a questionnaire. So anybody that applies for a job at our organization, they typically, the process here is, in the UK, is they'll hear about a job, they'll send you their CV or their resume with a cover letter, right? We just have an autoresponder, and it instantly goes back saying, thanks for sending these. By the way, we're not going to read them. What I need you to do is fill out this application form. And so that instant, so let's say, I remember we advertised one job, 400 people applied for the job. I'm like, how in the world am I going to get through all of these applications? So by having them fill out the application, I don't get 400 people, I get 20. Right.
That's
so just
right there.
Yeah. Right off. If you're not prepared to fill out this application, I could care less. Right. You may be the best performing person, but you're not going to fit. In the application form, we say things in there like what our core values are. And we ask questions like, if you were a superhero, what would your superhero name be? What would your superhero power be? And then we have a little box where you can draw your superhero costume, right? And we've had people do simple pencil line drawings to full-on glitter bomb paintings in that box, right? And the whole point of the questionnaire is there's not any right or wrong answers. It's just, I want to find out about you. And if you're the kind of person that's prepared to have a go at drawing your superhero costume, there's probably a strong chance you're going to fit in well with our organization.
I've never heard that before, and I like that. Yeah. Man. That's great.
Well, let me tell you a story, because you'll love this then. Right?
Yeah.
So we harp on. So if you're the opposite side of terrorists is superheroes, right? So if you're high performing, if you've got the cultural alignment and the competence alignment, we call those superheroes. If you've got cultural alignment, but you haven't got the competence, the question is, can we train you? And if we can, those are much better people than terrorists for your organization. You just have to think 2 years down the line, right? So we're always on the lookout for these superheroes, which is why we ask these questions. And we had a deadline for a job application for a marketing person in one of our ecom businesses. And I was in Jersey at the time, and I got a phone call from Rach, who used to work for us. And Rach called me, and she's like, "Matt, you are not going to believe what is happening right now." And I'm like, "What is going on?" She's like, "Some guy has just pulled up to the office dressed as Batman, and he has come in with a tray of cupcakes
Oh, wow.
and a job application for his friend." So this woman had filled out this application. She loved it so much, she managed to convince her friend to dress up as Batman, bring some cakes with her job application. You talk about memorable. Now,
Yeah.
how different is
Creative.
that
Yep.
to someone who just sends you a cover letter and a CV, right?
Yeah.
Totally different. All because we took the time to think about what questions do we want to ask people to understand their answers, which will give us some indication of cultural alignment. And one of the best things we ever did.
Did you end up
Question.
hiring that person?
No.
I was gonna say that's a tad extreme, you know.
No, not at all. I thought there's been 3 or 4 job applications which have totally stood out in my memory over the years, and that was one of them. The trouble was, whilst that was good, when we did more research, when we looked at our application and when we looked at obvious social media feeds, we were just like, I'm just not convinced from a cultural point of view this is right. I think we would have done some phone interviews with her. So we do that before we do in-person interviews and ask you questions like, just tell me about the last book you read. What did you like about it? What did you enjoy about it? Almost like being on a podcast these days, right?
Yeah.
And so she didn't actually make it all the way through. Nothing against her at all. I mean, I thought it was a brilliant idea, an absolute genius.
Just
but,
not a fit.
Yeah, we just didn't think it was a fit.
You'd mentioned 400 applicants, which is impressive, and then 20 of them actually responded to the questions. What do you think separates the difference between the people that responded and the people that don't? Because we see that all too often on just in our community and society, just in general, and even in the world. Is like, I think that's the separator, and we preach that all the time, right? Is actually getting creative, taking action on the things that you don't want to do, because we're all lazy human beings, right? It's just the ones with the discipline, the habits, the positive habits. But I'm curious on your take, your perspective on, out of the 400 applicants, only 20 of them actually responded, and you knew that was going to happen. There's such a gap there. Why do you think that is?
I could speculate all day. I mean, let me tell you the story about Michelle. So Michelle is my third longest standing employee. So there's a guy called Mark who works with us. He's a legend. He still looks 12 all these years later. He's unbelievable how he always looks young. Michelle works for me. She's number 2 in my organization. Okay. So she's worked for me the longest, and she is the highest she can go in our company, short of shooting me and she taking over, right? Now, Michelle, when she started with us, and she won't mind me telling you this, she'd just come out of bankruptcy, so she didn't have anything. She came from a retail background, and it was dog eat dog, very horrific, place to come from in a lot of ways. And she wanted to retrain. So she decided she was going to retrain as a bookkeeper. And at the time, I had a company that did bookkeeping services. And we got a call from an agency saying, listen, would you be interested in taking on a member of staff? It won't cost you anything for 3 months. And if after 3 months you think they're worthwhile, then by all means keep them. And you don't have to pay us any commissions or any of that sort of stuff. You just arrange a salary direct with them. And we thought, yeah, cool, why not, right? And so Michelle came along. She just had a baby, her youngest, Emily, who's the same age as she's a bit older than Zoe, actually. I think she's like 18. So this is 18 years ago, 17, 18 years ago. And she came and she worked for us for 3 months, okay? She was fantastic. She was the first one there. She was the last one to leave, and she grafted. And so, of course, we hired her, right? And then over the years, she started out as a bookkeeper. And over the years, as our business has changed and evolved, she's got involved in more and more things. And now she heads up she's the operations director for our whole organization. And so I found out sometime later that those 3 months that Michelle was working for us, she didn't get paid a single penny. And she came in every day, never mentioned anything about not. I just assumed that that agency was paying her something, that it was something to do with some kind of government issue. But no, they had government funding, but fundamentally people did not get paid. She didn't get any benefits or anything. She'd just come out of bankruptcy. She had a young daughter. She had two other kids. And here she is working for free for 3 months because she wanted to retrain. And there was something about us that she liked that made her wanted to stick it out. And I think for me, a lot of it comes down to, like I've always said, I think anybody can get any job they want if they think outside the box. So if I want to go work for Apple, for example, obviously I've got to have the competence to do it, right? So I'm not going to go
Right.
to Apple and say, oh, I'm going to design the next supercomputer.
Yeah.
But if I want to go work in a job in an organization, I'm going to research the kind of companies that I want to go work for, and I'm going to go look at the kind of roles they offer. I'm going to contact them and say, listen, do exactly what Michelle did and say, I will come and work for you for free for 3 months. If at the end of 3 months you don't think I'm worth the job or the salary, then all I'm going to request is an exit interview with you because I just want to understand why and how I can do better. And what I'm doing there is I'm absorbing all the risk rather than giving it to the employer who's got to go, are these guys going to be any good? Blah, 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 blah. And I think it's, for me, that ability to hustle, to graft, to work hard, to not expect everything just to be handed to you on a silver platter. Everybody thinks, well, to get a job, all I've got to do is I've just got to write this CV, I've got to write this cover letter, and I've just got to send it in, and then hopefully, I'll get it. Whereas I'm like, that's what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
Let's think outside the box a little bit.
What makes you stand out?
Yeah. And so why do 380 people not fill out the application form? There'll be a lot of reasons, most of which I will assume come down to I just can't be bothered. I just think this should be handed to me on a platter. What do you mean I have to fill out an application form? And that attitude in its own right tells me everything I need to know. So please don't fill it in. I don't want you in my organization.
Agreed. And the reason I asked that, because a lot of business owners, a lot of entrepreneurs listen to this, and we're facing, because I've hired dozens of employees. And again, I feel like I'm the bottleneck if I'm the leader, right? So my team, my business is only going to be as good as the leader. Yeah. And so one of the things that I find very interesting and insightful is okay, so you had to reach out to, or 400 applicants had to apply, and then you got 20 of those. So in my mind, to find the right one, to find the right fit, what does that take? What does that look like? Because as a small business owner myself, finding the right fits, like what would be one tip that has worked for you in building these businesses on finding the right people to work for you? I know you've kind of shared, you have your pre-interview process as far as asking the questions, venting them. But is there certain communities, online, social media, referrals? Where has your best people came from?
That's a really good question. So some of the people, I would say 80% of the people that work for me that have stayed and been great people have been referred to us. So they're people that know people that I know in some capacity. And I tend to try and exhaust that avenue first. So case in point, we advertised a job 2 weeks ago for customer service. And I just went onto Facebook and I just put a post on Facebook saying, we've got this job. Anybody interested, let me know. And we'll tell you the process. So what started happening was people that I knew started to tag people that they knew. Right. And so someone who's got the job now, I don't actually know who it is. I don't even know which one of my friends referred them to us because Michelle handled the whole process. I don't get involved in that, but
that's so cool.
But yeah, that I tend to find works really, really well. That whole referral process. Somebody usually knows somebody, and I would put it on Facebook, and I'd put it on LinkedIn, I'd put it on Instagram. Wherever your friends hang out, really. And if I look at the people, because we don't tend to lose people here. When people
Why do you think that is?
I think because of the culture. We have, I think, we don't pay the best salaries at all. And it's not because I'm tight with money. It's just because we're not flush enough with cash to give everybody 80 grand a year. We're just not. Um, and I think people want to work for reasons other than money. I think
Yeah.
money is important, but I don't think it's the primary reason. We found a quick tip. I found over the years that some of the best people to hire are mums returning to work, because mums returning to work have been out of the workforce for a couple of years. So they're slightly nervous, slightly apprehensive. They want money, but it's not the important thing. The important thing for them is they want understanding and flexibility. They
Yeah.
want to know if school calls up because John is sick, they can go and deal with Johnny and it not be a problem.
Right.
Or if they can't find somebody to come and sit with Johnny whilst they're at work that day because he's on holiday, they can just work from home.
Yep.
Or maybe they don't work today, maybe they work on Tuesday or something. Do you know what I mean? And I think if I can give them part-time hours, anything from 16 to 22 hours a week, I think works quite well. If I can give them that and I can give them understanding and flexibility and I give them training and just get alongside them and say, you're doing an awesome job. Here's what I found. Mums returning to work don't stress. They don't get flat. They can juggle so many balls in the air.
I was going to say they can multitask. One can multitask more than probably all three of us could if we all tried at the same
Mhm.
time. They'd have it
Yep.
done for us,
Exactly. They have massive capacity. And oftentimes, when mums have come and worked for us, when you look back over their CV, they're hyper educated, insane levels of skill. And to get someone from industry with that CV, I'd have to pay a small fortune,
Yeah.
right? And so it works out well both ways. So two ladies still work for me. There's a lady called Jen. She came on board. Friend of ours, I said to her, I said, Jen, I need someone in marketing for our beauty business. Are you interested? She goes, I don't really know much about marketing. I'm like, I'll teach you everything you need to know, but are you interested? She's like, yes. Okay, cool. So she starts working for us for marketing. How did I know I made the right hire with Jen? Was I went past her desk, she was sat at it, and she was reading the ingredients off the back of a beauty product. I don't know if you've ever tried to read the ingredients of the back of a beauty product.
It's
Those words are
complicated.
not pronounceable. I don't even know
Yeah.
how people make these words. I don't know how they communicate with somebody else. And I know some of these words are just, I know the pronunciation of them. I don't know where they get it from the spelling.
Yeah.
Jen was reading these words and pronouncing them correctly. And I'm
Wow.
like, how are you doing that?
Mm.
She said, well, science is my background, isn't it? I said, what do you mean? Turns out Jen has a PhD. She has a PhD in snake venom, which, granted, is not that helpful in marketing beauty products, but she has a PhD nonetheless. And so she now works in our supplements business. And the science knowledge and understanding she has paid dividends for us in marketing of those products, right? So I've got a
Mm.
PhD scientist. I've got a lady called Sadaf who works with us on the podcast. When she started working for us, she was working on one of our web agencies. And I said to her, I said, listen, Sadaf, we're short of project managers at the moment. Do you feel like you could handle this? And she said to me, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, could you do that? She's like, did you ever read my CV? And I said, actually, this word for word, what I said to Sadaf was, what part of you ever thinks I'm going to read your CV? Right? Surely you know me by now. And so I went and got her CV, her resume from my email. She said, you need to go read it. So I was like, okay, I went and read it. Turns out she's Prince 2 qualified, which is quite a big qualification where project management is concerned. And when I read between the lines, she also has an MBA. And so I'm like, okay, you are a very competent here. Have that project, which she ran with and did super well. And so she now heads up all our podcast company stuff. So very competent people. Look to mums returning back to work. I think
Two things
if
there, Matt. Kendra Scott, she's a jeweler. She makes jewelry. Her name's Kendra Scott. She's $1 billion brand now, and she started off basically her business. She was trying to sell hats and didn't work, but people loved her jewelry. And she was literally bankrupt her hat shop, but people still wanted the jewelry, so she was selling it to them. And so now she turned that from bankrupt on the outside of her store, crying in the rain, to $1 billion brand. And I heard her say the same thing. She said, if you want to get good hires and get people to get things done, hire mothers. And then I just got to thinking, my mom was a stay-at-home mom in Scotland and Livingston Village, and we moved to Edinburgh. And I think she went back to work when I was 12 or 13, and she was just my mom. And then I find out she has advanced degrees in chemistry. She ended up dissecting, like she basically, like all the medicines and stuff that come through the country. She would have a whole team dissect them, figure out what's going. And she ran the whole lab. And it got me thinking, my mom was like the most reliable, trustworthy person ever. I'm like, that's the person I would want working for us.
Exactly. Yeah, mum.
I never thought about that before. My mom is that person, and it just hit me. That's funny.
Is she for hire, Ewan?
Yeah. Oh man. That's a great question, man. We could do some. She could work remotely from Edinburgh. Yeah. Man, this was a great conversation. We try and keep the podcast to 45 minutes, which we're right at, but I feel like we could keep going because the people who listen to this show are business owners, and hiring people, firing people it keeps coming up. We have a mastermind, a paid mastermind group, and we just have been discussing this heavily. All the guys that are in there, business owners, 3 to 9 employees or more actually now, and having to deal with all this, so it's very pertinent information for them and the people who are going to be doing these things going forward. So this is a gold mine. Really, it's going to be very helpful.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad I can share the stories,
Yeah, great stories, man. I really connect with all of that. So
really appreciate you, Matt, man. Thanks for your time, energy, and effort today. Really grateful for you. A couple questions for you. Where can our listeners and audience, how can they support you?
Just connect with me. It'd be great to hear from you. Obviously, we'll try and help if I can. I'm not a genius in any of these things, by the way. I've just lived a few years. But yeah, I've got a website, mattedmundson.com, or you can reach me on social media at Matt Edmundson on Instagram and LinkedIn. Awesome. I'm not sure what it is on Facebook.
We'll put the links in there for people to find you.
Yeah, awesome, man. And then last but not least, final question. What does level up and live mean to you?
Level up and live, what does it mean to me? It speaks of growth. I remember someone saying to me once about a river, that the difference between a river and just like the smelly pond at the bottom of your garden is movement, and stagnant water always stinks, and fish die, and it's all that kind of thing. Water has to move, and I think level up and live for me is about growth, and it's about taking a hold. It's that taking hold of the reason you're here, your purpose, your calling, whatever language you want to use. Paul said it best when he said, I forget those things which are past and I reach forward towards this goal. And so level up and live, for me, the two things are synonymous in the sense, if there's no growth, there's no real life. Life is all about growth. And I think if you're not growing, if you're not developing in something, if you're not trying to achieve that reason you're here, that divine purpose, I don't know, I just feel like life's a bit smelly, really, a bit stinky. I would hate it. So don't stink, live.
Yeah, man, thanks for sharing that, Matt. And my preacher on Sunday, his sermon was about moving forward, and he had that from Paul. Was it Galatians or what was
Philippians? I think
Philippians. Yeah, it was Philippians chapter 1:20 or something. But yeah, he just on Sunday had mentioned that. It was a great sermon, and you saying that, man, that was awesome, man. Very cool.
Yeah,
well, great. I'm glad it helps.
Yeah, I love that. It's embodies everything about what human beings should be doing. Like say, if you don't move forward, you're stagnant.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got a purpose, right? You've got a reason you're here. And I think life then is about fulfilling that purpose. It's not a one-time event, and it's not easy. It's not always happy. It's not always straightforward. There's challenges, there's setbacks, there's suffering, there's whatever language you want to use, but ultimately there's joy. And I think joy comes out of that growth, and I think that's a wonderful thing.
Oh, man.
Beautifully said, man.
Awesome, man. Yeah, man. Thank you so much, man. Well, man, I say this I've said it a few times, not all the time, but man, you're someone I'd love to have back on the show at some point. I mean, there's so much more we could discuss, and you have so much business knowledge, and there's probably a number of different avenues we could go down that'd be very beneficial for our listeners. So, man, we'll hopefully be seeing you again back here if you accept, so that would be awesome. And we really appreciate you today.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's been great. Loved every minute of it, guys. You guys are doing a great thing. So awesome. Keep going. Keep pressing forward.
Thank you, man.
Level up.
Keep going.
Level up and
Keep
live.
pressing forward.
Level up and live. All right, man. Thank you, man. Level up and live. Thank you, man.
And there you have it. Another fantastic episode of Level Up and Live. A huge thank you to our incredible guest, Matt Edmundson, for sharing his wisdom and experiences with us today. If you've enjoyed this episode as much as we did, make sure to leave us a review, hit that subscribe button, and spread the inspiration by sharing this episode with your friends and family. Remember, your journey to a more fulfilling life is a marathon, not a sprint. Take the lessons from today's conversation, apply them to your life, and keep pushing towards that next level. As always, find our treasure chest of free guides and planners in the show notes. They're designed to support you on your quest for personal growth. Until next time, keep leveling up and living your best life.